Hi, this is Kristin Messerli with Insight Voices, where we talk about turning financial wellness into your competitive advantage. And today I'm meeting with Lili Thompson, who has a really great presence on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok called @LiliInvests, where she documents her path through real estate investing. She started her career in professional basketball and got into real estate investing early in the pandemic and started documenting her whole process. It's really fascinating. Her content is interesting. The interview is really interesting. She shared some of her thoughts for first-time homebuyers or first-time investors and what they should be thinking about or consider as they start down that path, and for educators and leaders on how they can do a better job of educating the next generation. So I love the interview. Follow her @LiliInvests and enjoy the interview. Thank you so much for taking some time to chat with me today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So I am a huge fan of your channel. I love the content you put together and kind of your story, and would like you to share a little bit about what got you into this, like what brought you into real estate investing to begin with.
Yeah, it wasn't something that growing up I ever really thought about or knew about. My dad was a real estate agent for a little while I was growing up, and every now and then remember like going out to a property or something with him. But really, I was focused on basketball in school growing up, got the chance to play college basketball, played a high level for a little bit after college. And really, it was just being around a lot of people who were successful. And there just seemed to be an overlap between successful people and those who had an interest in real estate. So I was like, okay, well, maybe there's something there. And I just started Googling and kind of reading about it. And that was the start.
And what made you decide to share your journey with others, sharing on YouTube and that type of thing?
Yeah, I think it was right around the time that the pandemic kicked off. And so I think like most of us, we picked up a lot of new hobbies kind of just out of boredom, to be honest. And I was watching a lot of YouTube, and I saw a lot of people who were already successful and who were talking about how they became successful. And those videos were super helpful to me. But there was also a component of like, okay, wait, go back, because that thing that you said that was super straightforward to you because you've been doing it for a decade, just like went completely over my head. So I realized that there was not a lot of people who were actually starting from day one, videos that I could find. So I thought that would be useful. That's something that I would watch. And then a friend sent me a quote from James Clear that was just completely unrelated, but the quote was something like, do cool things and document them, rather than trying to go back and tell what happened, tell what happens as you go. So I was kind of bored, kind of thought that was interesting, kind of thought there was a good opportunity, and I was at home and had the time. So that's kind of how it all came together.
I love that. And you left a career in basketball, correct? To pursue different things. And this is a primary focus of your business, correct?
Yeah. So I was actually playing with the Harlem Globetrotters at the time that COVID hit. And so obviously there wasn't much traveling and much globetrotting to be doing. And so that was actually obviously not my choice to transition away from the Globetrotters, but that's around the time when it happened. And by the time things kicked back up, real estate had taken off and YouTube had taken off. And so I decided to stick with this business and give my knees and rest of my body a break.
Cool. I love that. So I just released a report on millennial and Gen Z homebuyers, and a lot of the research I've done on that in the past, and especially in this report, shows that people just don't know where to start. There's a lot of fear and distrust in the market and professionals, but especially one of the stats I thought was interesting on this report was that they said that not knowing where to start was a major barrier to buying a home right now. And so what kind of advice do you give to people, whether they're starting out in real estate investing or just buying their first home? What are some of the things that you feel like are important to share with people in that place?
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I think I was in a very similar place when I went to get my first property. And really, not everyone wants to be a real estate investor, right? Everybody doesn't want to go out and build a portfolio of rental properties and have that be their full-time job. You may just want to buy a house for yourself to live in, right? You may just want to own the place that you live. And I think coming at it from that perspective, there's so much generic information out there. We may hear like, oh, this is a credit score requirement, or they want 2 years of job history, or whatever these generic requirements might be. And my advice is to actually call a local mortgage lender, whether it's a local credit union or like a small local bank, and try to whittle away at that generic information. Like, for example, I was coming out of college when I wanted to buy my first property to live in for myself. And so I off the bat was like, well, I have to wait 2 years because I need 2 years of job history. But actually, they just requested my school transcripts. They just wanted proof that I was doing something the last 2 years, not just like floating through the world. And they kind of gave me a little bit of leeway in not having 2 years of job history because they could see that I was enrolled in school. And that's kind of what my quote unquote job was. And then there are other options that lenders might give you, whether it's a different type of property. There's something called down payment assistance, which I had no idea about. But as a first-time home buyer, my lender told me, hey, you qualify for this program that will pay your down payment for you. And if you keep the house for 5 years, you never have to pay it back. I was like, okay, sounds like a pretty good deal. But that wasn't what I initially thought the situation would be until I actually had a free conversation with a professional, told them my situation. And it kind of took some of those scary, I guess, requirements out of it, as well as let me know maybe some opportunities to make it a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah. And I think even for me, I knew a lot about buying a home. I've spent a lot of my career in home buying education, that type of thing. But then when I went to do it a couple years ago, I just felt so stressed and overwhelmed that everything felt foreign, and I think that whenever you really sit down and talk to someone, it becomes a lot easier to manage. By just going online or looking at the information yourself, it can feel like there's an extra level of anxiety around it,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we think that mortgage lenders or credit union lenders might not like us having those questions, but that's actually their job. So what they're there for is to educate their clients and help you decide kind of the best way to go. And so even just calling up 2 or 3 over the course of a week can give you a good idea of like, okay, maybe it's not as scary as it seems, or maybe I need to do this thing. Maybe I need to pay off this credit card and that'll help me with a ratio or something that's important, but at least you have some direction.
Yeah, definitely. And it gets personalized to you.
Right. Absolutely.
So one of the things you said was that we get used to a certain language when you've been in the industry for a while, and it becomes more difficult to simplify it for people, or you forget to do that. What are some other ways that educators or leaders in the space could do a better job of educating that first-time buyer or younger consumer?
Yeah, I think online there's a push, especially to make things seem easy and simple and fast. And I think that actually does people a disservice because when I think easy, simple, and fast, and then I go in and it's not easy, simple, and fast, I'm like, I'm out of here. This is not what I signed up for. And unfortunately, home buying isn't always an easy, simple, fast scenario. But if you're prepared for the ways in which it might be difficult, then I think you're a little better equipped to stick it out and actually arrive at the end goal. For example, there's a lot of expensive cities out there that you may just not qualify for a loan in. And that can be a big barrier. You may have to think about, do I want to put down roots in this city? Am I willing to move a little bit outside of the city and commute to work? Or am I deciding between 2 job offers where one of them allows me to work from home and therefore relocate to a place where I can afford a property? And those are really big decisions. And so I think we have to realize, yeah, it is a big decision. It may not go quickly and it probably won't be easy, but if we decide that it's still worth it, then great.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, when I bought my first home, it was in Tulsa actually. And I was a social worker. I made like almost no money and I could still buy a 3-bedroom house, no problem. But moving to LA took a lot longer and it's a very different, you have to think through those factors. And I was just talking about this with someone that I think it would be helpful for educators or professionals to also help consumers think through those kinds of bigger picture goals too, and understand if you move somewhere, you're making a decision about when you're going to buy a home or when you're going to do those types of things that you don't realize your budget is way more in a bigger city, So those are things to think about too.
Absolutely. That cost of living, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, definitely. So you spend a lot of your content and time focused on real estate investing in particular. And I think a lot of people do want to do that someday, or at least want to think about it. But it does feel like a very, overwhelming to start on that path. Other than watching your channel, what are some ideas or things that people should think about whenever they're starting down that path of real estate investing in particular?
Yeah, I think thinking about your lifestyle and your end goals, kind of that quote unquote why you want to think about real estate investing. And for me, I wanted to move into something that was kind of self-driven. I could work on my own schedule. I could perform really well and make more money versus like being in a job and it's kind of like, this is what you're getting paid no matter where your performance was. So those were some of my whys. And so I was willing to go into real estate investing full time. But I think for someone who maybe just wants to continue working their job and use real estate investing as a way to set up for retirement, they're going to use a very different strategy than I would use because I'm trying to go full time versus someone who's not. So I think those are important decisions. And then really just educating yourself. And again, I won't say that it's easy or fast, but I will say that like the math of real estate investing is pretty simple. It's actually the execution of doing the things that you need to do over and over again where the difficulty comes in. And so, for example, that might be like actually reading the books. And there's books I've read 2 or 3 times just to like digest the knowledge, And so if you're not willing to do that, then that's actually where the difficulty comes in. Or for example, in order to get my first deal, I made over 80 offers that were no's and that didn't work out before getting that first yes. And so the math behind the investing was actually relatively simple once you put in the work to understand it. It's just like that consistency and making sure what you're doing is leading towards how involved you want to be. And there's a whole spectrum of types of real estate investing, going from completely passive, where you just put your money in, you let somebody else run it, to completely active, where you get somebody else's money and then you do all the work and everything in between. So those are important questions to ask.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So my last question for you, I'm working on a nonprofit that is providing financial literacy, starting with homeownership education to high school and college students. You had a dad that was a real estate agent, so that may be a little bit different for you, but do you have any thoughts on what are some basic things people should know by the time they're 21? I feel like people should be learning about buying a home a lot earlier, just so that it's not something so foreign by the time that they're at that age or later. But do you have any thoughts on what you think people should be learning by the time they're at that age?
Yeah, it's an interesting system. I think credit is obviously super important to qualifying for a home loan. And so just understanding the process of what goes into making up your credit score, which, believe me, I think is boring and unnecessary. I don't like the credit score system, but my opinion isn't going to change how home loans are done across the country. Not necessarily, right? When I go into the office, they're still going to ask for the same thing. So I think just understanding how that works. And I was in a situation like, oh, well, I don't want to use a credit card because I thought debt was bad. But then you get into a situation where you don't have any credit and no one wants to give you a loan. And so understanding credit, understanding how the loan process works. Interest rates are a buzzword that we hear a lot now. And I think it's less important to understand why interest rates are changing. I think people spend their entire careers as economists trying to figure that out. And more so just understanding how interest rates changing might affect you as an individual consumer. A lot of people, when interest rates dropped, realized that they now had more buying power. And so that spurred them into taking action. And I think if you're not aware that, oh, interest rates dropping means I have more buying power, then you can get left out. So just understanding some of those key factors that go to your buying power, that go to how willing someone is able to give you a loan. Those are just good things to start thinking about.
Yeah, definitely. And even understanding that if interest rates go up, but home prices go down, like that, I think a lot of people hear interest rates are up and so they're afraid, but they don't realize that they still have more buying power potentially because of the home price changes, depending on your market or whatever. But
absolutely. Even just having like a free mortgage calculator app, it was one of the first things I downloaded on my phone when I started getting into real estate investing, and just being able to play with those numbers. It makes a huge difference. Like you said, now you're just more aware.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Well, thank you so much for taking some time to chat with me. How can people support you and your mission? You can go to your YouTube channel, I'm assuming, Lili Invests. Anything else we can be doing to support you?
Yeah, really, YouTube is great if you want to come along on the journey of real estate investing, and maybe it'll just be interesting seeing some of the crazy things that happen and the things you find in abandoned houses. And maybe you want to jump on that train and learn as well. But I'm Lili Invests on all platforms, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and just come say hey.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.